Hi, I'm Mr. Hutchings, and you're listening to Mr. Hutchings History. Today is topic 5.4 of the AP World History program, Industrialization Spreads. And this is the era of about 1750 to 1900. Our AP themes today will be technology and innovation, economic systems, environmental impacts, and governance. Our historical reasoning skills will be causation, comparison, and continuity and change over time. When industrialization began in Britain, it did not stay British for long. Factories, machines, and new systems of production spread outward, first across Europe, then to the Americas and Asia. But this spread was uneven, selective, and deeply shaped by political power. Some regions industrialized and grew stronger. Others were pushed into supplying raw materials instead of manufacturing goods. Today's central question is this: how did industrial production spread beyond Britain, and why did it benefit some regions while weakening others? By the early 19th century, Britain had transformed cotton production from a cottage industry into a factory system. Machine spun textiles were cheaper, faster to produce, and more consistent than hand woven cloth. As a result, British cotton flooded global markets. This had immediate consequences. Industrialized Britain, with far higher productivity, replaced Indian and Middle Eastern textiles, which had dominated the world trade for textiles for centuries. Regions that once produced finished goods increasingly exported raw materials instead. This marks a major shift in the global economy. Industrial centers manufactured, colonies supplied. After Britain, industrialization spread first to Belgium, then to France and Germany. These regions shared several advantages with Britain: access to capital, natural resources such as coal and iron, and systems of river transportation. France industrialized more slowly. The French population was less urban, limiting factory labor, and the French Revolution and Napoleonic Wars consumed attention and resources that might otherwise have gone into industry. Germany faced a different obstacle: political fragmentation. Dozens of small states limited coordinated economic development. But after German unification in 1871, industrial growth accelerated rapidly. Germany became a leading producer of steel and coal. Why did political stability and unification matter for industrial growth? Because large scale industry requires coordination, investment, and infrastructure. Fragmented or unstable states struggle to support these systems. The United States began industrializing in the 19th century and emerged as a leading industrial power by 1900. A key factor was human capital. Massive immigration from Europe and East Asia, combined with rural to urban migration within the country, provided a large labor force for factories. The United States also possessed abundant natural resources: coal, iron, timber, and vast internal markets connected by railroads. Unlike many colonies, the United States controlled its own economic policy, allowing it to industrialize rather than deindustrialize. Russia also industrialized, but selectively. The government focused heavily on railroad construction, especially the Trans Siberian Railroad, which linked European Russia to East Asia. Railroads stimulated coal, iron, and steel production, making Russia the fourth largest steel producer by 1900. Yet, despite these advances, Russia remained overwhelmingly agricultural. Industrialization did not fundamentally restructure society before the 20th century in Russia. This illustrates an important point. Industrialization can exist without widespread industrial society. Japan presents a striking contrast. Despite minimal contact with Europe since the 17th century, Japan became the first Asian country to industrialize. In the mid 19th century, Japanese leaders pursued defensive modernization. Rather than embracing Western culture wholesale, Japan selectively adopted Western technology and Western institutions to protect Japanese independence and preserve Japanese traditions. Industrialization strengthened Japan's military and economy. By the late 19th century, Japan had emerged as a global power. Why did Japan industrialize successfully while many other Asian societies did not? Because Japan controlled its own reforms. Japan adopted technology without losing political sovereignty. While Europe, the United States, Russia, and Japan industrialized, other regions experienced decline. India and Southeast Asia had long histories of shipbuilding and metalworking, but British colonial rule reshaped these industries. In India, British officials mismanaged resources and gradually dismantled local shipbuilding. The British East India Company and later the Royal Navy took control of the Indian Ocean trade. British tariffs and colonial policies also crippled India's iron and steel industries. Mines were closed, especially after the rebellion of 1857, due to fears of Indian resistance against British rule. British laws restricted access to minerals and firearms to people in India. By the 19th century, once productive mining regions like Rajasthan were abandoned. After Indian independence, India struggled to rebuild these industries. India and Egypt had been major textile producers for centuries, but European industrial output overwhelmed their markets. British mill owners pressured colonial governments to impose taxes on Indian textiles, undermining local profitability for Indian textile producers. European cloth flooded Indian and Egyptian markets, replacing the local production in both India and Egypt. This process, known as deindustrialization, transformed once manufacturing regions into exporters of raw materials and turned them into consumers of foreign made goods. Why would industrial powers deliberately weaken manufacturing in their colonies? Because controlling colonies as raw material suppliers protected industrial profits and reduced competition. Topic 5.4 shows that industrialization was not a neutral or universal process. Industrialization spread through access to capital and resources, political sovereignty and stability, and control over trade and tariffs. Industrialization strengthened some states while locking others into dependent economic roles. This topic reinforces causation, why industrialization spread unevenly. Comparison, different regional paths for industrialization, and continuity and change, long term economic restructuring of the world. By 1900, the world economy had been reorganized. Industrial powers dominated manufacturing. Colonized regions supplied labor and raw materials. Economic inequality between regions widened dramatically. The spread of industrialization created growth, but also dependency. Understanding this imbalance helps explain later resistance, later reform movements, and later struggles for economic independence in the 20th century. How does control over production shape global power? Those who control manufacturing and control trade terms shape wealth, shape influence, and shape political outcomes across the world. I'm Mr. Hutchings, and thank you for joining me for this episode. As always, continue to study history. It matters.